Really excited to have Lisa Marino from RockYou here. RockYou's been around for a while, and Lisa has been
and
there.
And has done many pivots.
Exactly. Lisa's been there for over 5 years, various roles, VP of Sales, Chief Revenue Officer, and CEO for the last couple of years. And she's going to, I think, talk to us about pivoting a business, which is no easy thing to do, and she's done a fantastic job, so we're excited to hear about it.
Good morning, everyone. So my partner and COO was supposed to be here today, and I told him unequivocally that I was going to do this conversation, largely because I get to publicly take responsibility for all my screw-ups. I sort of look at this topic as we're all kind of in an AA meeting. Either everyone in this room is very highly sadistic, or at least they've admitted they've got a problem and now they're trying to deal with it. So with that, we will talk about what we have done over the last several years as we've made a couple of different pivots and go from there. So, bottom line, most companies are not quite the success of a Google or a Facebook, but not yet necessarily defunct. Most have a few bucks in the bank. Some go down a path of being zombie organizations, but figuring out what you do when your initial business plan isn't crushing it and scaling in the way that you want is a very, very challenging, it's a very, very challenging exercise. And especially when you've done things like missed markets, or when you've got execution challenges, or management issues, there's just so many things that can drive an impact when a company needs to take a pivot, and we're going to talk about some of those today. So, what are the traditional outcomes for a startup? One is you hit it big, great success, make a ton of dough. I mean, that's why everyone's in the business in the first place. I don't care what startup you're doing. Most crash and burn, to be perfectly honest. And others end up being sort of these zombie companies where they're not really growing, they're probably break even or profitable, and they're really just kind of trying to find their way. And I think a lot of organizations get stuck in that place, and figuring out how to go from there into scale is what we're going to talk about today. So, rule number 1, make sure you've got minimal burn while you're trying to figure out what your next step is in the pivot. I was fortunate enough when I inherited RockYou to have $40 million in the bank. My burn was $1.5 million a month. And we were still very committed to being a game maker. Unfortunately, what we did not accept as our DNA is all of our revenue came from advertising. And we were very, very good at social advertising, we were very, very good at brand sales, and we were very, very good at innovating on in-game ad products. And that being said, we still wanted to build games. When I inherited RockYou, we had about 200 people. There were 30 on the ads team, and then the rest were building games. And we couldn't get a game out besides Zoo World for 2.5 years. So let's talk a little bit about the cultural myths that sort of drove that situation. First was we're in a really hot industry, right? Zynga was beginning to take off. They were the hot chick at the dance. You saw some success coming out of Wooga. It was very, very cool and very, very chic to be in the social gaming space at that period of time. And the reality is going from where we were to the success of Zynga or Google or one of the other very successful organizations takes a very different organization than what I inherited. This is a little bit more of what we ended up getting. Kind of the blind leading the blind, 5-year-olds playing soccer, tug of war, oh my God, what are we going to do? Kind of, all of those things were wrapped up into one. And I think that's very important to understand because when you're in an industry that is growing and nascent and has a lot of upside, not only do you need to make a lot of bets and call things properly in a very sort of prognosticative way, you also, when you're in the middle of a pivot, need to deal with your internal stuff and your operational issues and what you're good at, and there's so many additional elements besides just getting it right from an industry perspective against somebody like Zynga, for example, back in the day when they were scaling. So rule number 2 for us was really just getting back to basics. We started looking at what we did well, where our revenues were coming from. We started doing this about 18 months ago. And the result of that was we made an acquisition that allowed us to really take what we did well, which was video and games, and build a game mechanic around that we could bring out to third-party publishers. And we do that in Facebook and mobile today. A couple organizational myths, right? Like, you know, we had a very tight org structure at RockYou for a very long time, but the reality is we functioned like this. And just about every startup's going to do that. And even today, you know, RockYou's 55 people. There's so much overlap between the different responsibilities of the different groups, the interdependencies between our owned and operated games and the advertising that's driven between them, how our ad products work and how we leverage our own titles to build new and successful products that we can bring out to other third-party games. So again, the reality on the organizational side is really, it's just a web, and you need to be able to function in that environment. So the next piece, rule number 3, is, again, knowing your business, right? And we had to come to Jesus, again, about 18 months ago, around what do we do well? And when we made this acquisition of Bingo by Rising in June of 2012, the reason we did it is we were already publishing that title, and we found a game mechanic around sweepstakes. And so in that game, Bingo, users are allowed to win real-world cash and prizes. So if I play in the cash room, I can win up to $1,500 if I get bingo within 10 or 12 balls, for example. And so users are very passionate about that game. And when you think about the rules around sweepstakes, it is very clearly not gambling, so it's eligible in all states. And what we started experimenting with at that time was, how can ads and sweepstakes play together? And what we found was, when you build a mechanic where users can get sweepstakes entries for watching videos, 25% of your DAU watch 40 videos a day. On a daily basis, Bingo will do about a 30-cent ARPDAU, 10 cents of which is ads. And guess what I don't have to share with Facebook? The 10 cents. The 20 cents, we obviously have a 70-30 rev share split there. So we do a lot around ad optimization. And so in that title, you can earn sweepstakes entries to play in the cash room in 3 ways. One is by just your basic grind, right? Playing in the non-cash rooms, up every day, getting your bonuses, very simple and very classic social gaming mechanics. The second is, think McDonald's Monopoly. So I go in and buy a cheeseburger, and with that, they give me McDonald's Monopoly chips to put on my board. Very similar on the digital goods side of the house. So a user will buy Bingo Bucks, which is the currency in the game, and they will be bonused, just like with Monopoly chips, they will be bonused with sweepstakes entries called gold cards. And then the last way, again, is watching videos. We give away more sweepstakes entries for videos per day than we do any of the other 2 methods. And so what we realized was this notion of sweepstakes and advertising are the basis of a platform that is very distinct, that can work online and in mobile, and that allows us to work with publishers in a way that kind of locks them up, right? Because the sweepstakes element increases ARPDAU anywhere from, well, in Bingo, it's about a 25% increase in digital goods ARPDAU, plus you've got all the ads component to it as well. And so we're now taking that to third-party titles, and it's going actually very well. So again, it comes down to really understanding and embracing what we do well and creating a unique spin about it. Decision-making in this process was very difficult. You know, I mean, I had 2.5 riffs. And both times, the 2 big riffs we had, they were literally on the year anniversary. One was on the year anniversary of the other. And we laid off over 50 people in both cases. The second riff was the one that was probably most damaging for me personally, because I inherited a 200-person organization, brought it down to about 125 to get burn under control, given the 40 million we had in the bank. And I hired somebody to run the games organization as my partner, who was a big company guy. And this big company guy got us back up to 200 people, and I let it happen. And when we put 7 games into development and only launched 1, which was a sequel to our top title, Zoo World, once we launched it, it actually cannibalized the first game, and we never made, the 2 combined never made as much money as Zoo World 1 alone. And so when I look at all of that, it was a very, very painful 2011 for us. And the riff was, again, a result of a lot of mistakes we made by not embracing what we did well, which was we're really good at ads and games, and we were less strong at actually making them. We do a good job of running them, though, once we own them. And so we've done a lot of acquisitions in that area. But again, building something from scratch was just not something we did. So taking decisions around that and building a strategy and an area of focus that embraced what we did well was really challenging. As a result, it does kind of, I mean, we went through a lot of exercises and scenarios and mistakes and throwing things against the wall, very much like a trading floor would look like. And it was quite chaotic for a very long time until we finally just got back to basics. So, how do you start the pivot, right? First is just basically putting a stake in the ground. The keys to that for us were fairly simple. Again, understanding what we did well. Fortunately for me, I joined the company running the sales team, and I knew how to scale ad revenue from previous careers pretty aggressively. In the last 12 months, we've more than doubled our revenue. We are profitable today, and we are growing very, very quickly under this ads plus sweepstakes model. We did a lot of testing of hypotheses, right? The biggest one was testing this notion of sweeps plus ads, and it ended up paying off in spades. And it is, again, a unique and replicable mechanic that is very, very compelling to anybody in social gaming, whether online or mobile. We needed to gather market feedback. I think some of the biggest things that we looked at as we were going down this path was how big was video going to be, right? Video is going to be a, I don't know, $4 billion market this year. But when you look at the breakdown of how video grows, that is the most interesting component. We served 500 million video impressions in the month of June. Google did 3.3 billion. So we're very big, and all we do are games at this point. And when you look at the trend in video buying, it's very interesting. Things are going in a programmatic capacity. And by programmatic, I mean buyers are logging in like trading desks and doing spot purchases or buys in a real-time bidding capacity. That's never been seen before. What that does is it means audience buying is a very, very big deal, and that's how you scale revenue. And so we've done a great job of building channels of different audiences so that we can do, in fact, sell the way that buyers buy. The other piece is I don't need a very big sales team anymore. There's 3 sellers at RockYou today, myself being one of them. And we call on agency exchanges and we call on DSPs to get those partners up and running on our platform in our private marketplace so that they can enable real-time bidding for all of their major buyers. And when I say major buyers, I'm talking Ford, I'm talking Unilever, I'm talking Procter & Gamble, I'm talking every brand that we worked with from 2008 until we went into this programmatic mode. The other thing on the market feedback, obviously, the hot chick at the dance in the gaming world is real money gaming. Obviously, Zynga pulled out last week, which I think is the craziest thing ever, but Zynga's done weirder stuff, I guess. And when you look at the sweepstakes side of things, that was a really interesting opportunity for us, not just because of the ad mechanic and the complement there, but because reality is, and I think this is a big reason why Zynga pulled out, is because you've got a situation where licensing is going to be done on a state-by-state basis. And it is going to take years, like at least 5, for this stuff to be moving in any sort of standards-based capacity, right? You've got Nevada and New Jersey moving forward, but you're not going to see a game online till sometime middle of next year. Those guys haven't even defined what the laws are going to be, what the partnership requirements are going to be, and what the licensing requirements are going to be. And so it's going to be almost impossible to do anything in an online poker or gambling or casino capacity until those things are fleshed out. And then it's going to be probably close to a year once those laws are signed. So we look at sweepstakes as sort of V1 of that. That's available today, and it's really exciting because it fits into any game. It's not necessarily just a gambling opportunity. We did a lot on analyzing the data. I mean, I think we kind of covered that quite a bit in the last couple minutes. And I think, we get back to a main point, which is have a long runway. So I was fortunate enough to have $40 million in the bank. we had probably 2 million left in January of this year. And that was a very scary place. It forced us to get small. It forced us to focus on growing revenue and we traded off many other things in order to do that. But fortunately, as a result, today we are profitable and we are generating cash rather than burning it. And that is a very wonderful place to be because RockYou has never been there ever since in my entire tenure at the company. And so, having to really sit down and say, how many people do we need? Having to sit down and say, what pubs are going to get paid this month? Because I don't know that we have enough money to pay everybody. What bills are going to get paid this month? Because we don't have enough money to pay everybody. And we probably went through a 90-day period where we really had to buckle down, and we made some very tough choices about who was and was not going to get paid, for example. We've now cleared all that up, but it was touch and go for a long time because we didn't have very much money in the bank, and we did not give ourselves enough runway. And if there's one thing besides understanding what you're good at that I would say is the most important in this process, it's making sure you've got a few bucks in the bank to give yourself some runway. Revitalizing your team, it's a big deal, right? And it was a hard transition for RockYou. Not everyone stayed. People who are passionate about games and came to the company to build games, most of them aren't there anymore because we don't actually build games anymore. We do ads, and we do a lot of video. And people who love to carry revenue numbers function well in our organization. People who can manage in a trading desk environment work well in our organization because when you're dealing with an ad network, it's about optimization, it's about daily revenue, and it's about managing your inventory on a day-to-day basis. So the team is very different, and the culture is very different, and but it fits what we do today. Am I done? Oh, sorry. And then living your solutions every day. I mean, that's kind of very straightforward, right? Make sure that you're focused, everyone knows what the goals of the company are, and they're rallied around achieving those objectives. Again, more runway. And then now we're really starting to scale. So we did about $2.5 million in revenue last month, which was the best that we have done since June of 2011. And that was when we had a very big game in Zoo World and a much smaller ad network. In that environment, we also had about 180 people, and we burned about $1.4 million that month instead of generating $300,000 in profit. So, and we've got tons of products and solutions in the pipeline that will provide step function revenue growth over the next 12 months. So, for example, our private marketplace launches next week, which is going to open up our inventory, our Class 1 inventory, to third-party demand-side platforms as well as major brands, so the P&Gs, the Unilevers of the world. We are launching our mobile solutions, which are exactly the same types of ad units as we have in online, in early Q4 to prepare for that revenue stream. And then last, our sweepstakes platform for third-party games is just launching right now. All three of those are going to put us in a situation within the next 12 months where we should be doing about $5 million a month in revenue with about 60, 65 people at the company. So we did it. It sucked. Most days I wanted to shoot myself. The one thing I can say is myself and my partner, we never gave up. And we took a lot of bad choices. We were accountable for them. We had a lot of unpleasant conversations with the board. But ultimately, we got it right. We fixed the cap table of the company. So now everyone in management is properly incentivized from a financial perspective. And we've got a very tight and focused strategy today. So that's it. Questions? Yes?
What's your opinion on the sort of insured, very high value swimsuit prices? You know, right? $10 million.
Yeah, no, they're great. We love them.
Do you use a third-party provider on that?
Absolutely. You've got to insure that stuff. You're nuts if you don't. Yes? Anything else?
Do you think the major brands are going to move into mobile advertising? It's been disappointing when you run mobile ads to see anything but ads from games or
Correct. So yes, they are. The number one question I get in the field is, when is mobile going to be available? Now, let's talk a little bit about what happened in social gaming, because mobile's mirroring that. And so I've been to this movie before, and I know exactly what's going to happen. So phase one of social advertising, we're endemic advertisers, right? I mean, Zynga used to be our biggest customer, and we used to drive them, I don't know, 300,000-400,000 installs a day from our ad network. And they would pay us $1.3 million a month just for CPI. And we had a bunch of other clients, not nearly as big, but CPI was probably $2 million of RockYou revenue back in the day when our ad network was 600 million display impressions. And over time, you see the ARB turn negative, right? Obviously, Zynga saw that probably about 2 years ago. And when arbitrage turns negative, it's very difficult for the endemic advertisers to sustain the rates that they had been offering previously. Mobile will hit that probably in about 2 quarters. In addition, you've got another dynamic that's happening where this notion of programmatic that we talked about. Brands want to log into the RockYou portal, for example, and be able to execute a buy where, let's say it's a $100,000 buy. I want 20 grand to go to mobile because mobile's still a test budget for me, but I'm totally happy to throw 20 grand at it in gaming inventory, and another 80 is going to go to, tried true stuff that I know is going to perform well, which are traditional online in-game units. And we sell that all day long. Every single IO that we bring in, and this has been the case for God the last 8 months, has 20% of the dollars allocated to mobile. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so that is beginning to change. And Q4 for mobile should see a nice spike up. I don't see mobile for brand advertising really picking up till end of Q2, so kind of like a year from now. But it will still be growing. And the challenge you've got, though, the challenge that the industry has for mobile, and let's take someone like a Vungle or a Playhaven or an Amplifier. They've got tons of pubs, they've got lots of video inventory, but they've got proprietary ad servers, and they can't run things in an RTB capacity. And until those guys, and so we're, like, our big mobile solution is actually enabling that for them because we're so brand-centric, and their revenue today is coming from endemic advertisers. And correct. Everything should be an MP4. And then it can run on any platform, online, tablets, phones, whatever. And so the big video networks, right, the Bright Rolls and the Adapts, those guys are really leading the way to sort of standardize that stuff. And the people who've got the mobile inventory aren't there yet. And we are working very hard because we understand gaming, right? We have our own games too, and we've been in the space for a long time, to get them simple solutions that allow them to take advantage of our private marketplace and be our inventory provider. We'll guarantee them CPMs, we'll guarantee them total inventory impressions that we're going to take on a daily basis for Q4, and that's being received fairly well. But there is some development work on their end so that they can traffic things in a tagged-based capacity, right? Because that's how online ads works for video and display today. And it'll get there. I think 1 or 2 of the people we're talking to will take advantage of what we're offering for Q4. But the nexus of supply and demand doesn't sort of begin to really take off until the people who've got the inventory actually can run in a programmatic capacity.
The other side of the coin there is that the apps themselves, the publishers, are locked into, let's say, a third platform.
Right.
And that platform can't run ads from another platform.
Correct. But so what we're coming out with allows that to work so that they can run third-party ad-served ads. And they can't scale revenue, and they will always be stuck with endemic advertisers until they make that investment. We used to run that way too. And about a year ago, we started investing in programmatic. My programmatic revenue went from $80,000 in February to $1 million in June. And it's just because we were getting it right, and we put more demand into the funnel. And when we started seeing arbitrage opportunities, we just went out and bought a ton of inventory, and it's paying off really well. We done? Okay. Thanks, you guys.